Thank you, Ahmed.
Hello, everyone, and thank you so much, Sarah, for the opportunity. Thank you for TESOL. It's wonderful to be part of this event. Today, I'm talking to you from Gaza City, and I'll be talking about translanguaging as a pedagogical strategy and how we used it in our classrooms during the war on Gaza. My name is Ahmed Junina, and I am the head of the English department at Al-Aqsa University here in Gaza. So a bit of background to what I'll be talking about. As a result of the war on Gaza, I'm sure many of you are aware of the severe destruction that happened to really daily life and in particular education, the education sector in Gaza. We resumed teaching online virtually in July 2024. And we were in a tricky situation. We felt that the interruption wasn't going to be short. We felt that it's going to be prolonged. That's why there was a decision, a very difficult decision regarding resuming online teaching and online learning. So we made the decision then in July 2024, and then we encouraged our students to engage as much as they could. And I'm talking about a context where students were learning amid continuous displacement, amid trauma, amid hunger and loss and waiting and worry. All these feelings were part of our daily engagement with our students. We had no access to electricity. We had no access to stable internet connection. So it was tricky, it was challenging, but it felt that there was an immediate need for doing something about it, for providing a sense of hope for our students after that prolonged interruption and disruption to their learning journey. So when we resumed, it felt that, okay, going to online teaching as COVID period wasn't going to be easy, because the requirements of online teaching when we had COVID were totally different. I mean, we had access to electricity, we had access to internet connection, but now amid war, these were conditions that did not exist, unfortunately. So we felt that we want to adapt. We had to adapt. We had to tweak our strategies, our approaches to suit the unique circumstances of our students and ourselves, because we were part of the story. We were facing the same challenges as our students did. So we felt that, okay, let's go low bandwidth, use low bandwidth platforms such as Telegram and WhatsApp and make them as our classrooms. And then we invited our students to join those WhatsApp groups as if they were like virtual classrooms. And of course, I'll be talking about how we use WhatsApp in terms of sending voice notes, kind of compressing the content we were sending to our students in very small sections, small PDF files. And translanguaging was a necessity then. It felt that we needed to make sure that how we approach that learning experience for our students was accessible for them, given the unique circumstances we were all living through. This is us during an orientation session back in 2023, just a few weeks before the war on Gaza. This is Al-Aqsa University campus in Gaza. These were new students joining the English department, and we were kind of taking a tour around the campus in Gaza, welcoming new students, looking for a new academic year. And then a few weeks later, the whole situation changed. It was dramatic, it was heartbreaking, but that is reality. But then we felt that, okay, the collapse of physical structures and the collapse of buildings is not the end of the world, because we need to find a way. We need to adapt. We had been talking about adaptation and teaching and learning and education to our students and teaching them how to be adaptable and how to accommodate students' needs. especially when training teachers. Now it's time to apply those theories and principles in practice and in our lived reality. So this is one of my students, Dalia. She was featured in a CPC news report. And as you can see, students were using really primitive ways of connecting to their classes to access the content we were delivering. This is one way of catching the Wi-Fi signal in Gaza. Dalia here was trying to catch a Wi-Fi signal through an eSIM she used, but that signal wasn't available in all locations in Gaza. So you had to go to really climb maybe the roof of your house in order to be able to catch the signal. And she was raising the stick in order to kind of improve the signal of the Wi-Fi. And then she would access that WhatsApp group, maybe download voice notes, PDF files, etc., so she can catch up with the content. This is another one of my students, and here she uses an internet voucher. As you can see, she's holding the phone, and it was risky, honestly, because approaching areas like open space and trying to catch the signal this way was really risky. But students tried, and they did their best in order to access their classes and continue learning. And academics and teachers were doing the same. So these were students from the English department at Al-Aqsa University. And as I said, all this was taken place in a context of, it is unfortunate, but this is reality. And this is kind of, I'm not talking about politics here. Don't worry if you don't like politics, but I'm just giving you the background to my research project and the environment we were all navigating. Students were, most of them were displaced. 92% of them were accessing their classes using smartphones. These are findings of my research. And about 87% of them were sharing the device they were using to access their classroom. And this was happening in the context of displacement, loss, and hunger. And when I'm talking about hunger, I'm reflecting on a collective experience. And this was a piece I wrote for The Guardian back in August, talking about that experience of teaching, researching, learning, working while hungry, while being starved. And I reflected on not only my story, but I reflected on that collective story of my students, of my fellow academics, of my friends, my family members, because I have seen people collapse out of hunger. I've talked to them. I listened to my students. I received their complaints about not being able to focus, feeling dizzy because of being hungry in 2025. That's true. So that was the context. But then I have those questions that I wanted them to guide my research project, because I was intentionally using Arabic in my semantics course. This was a semantics course that was delivered online. I'll be giving you more details about it. But these were questions that I wanted to explore. And I wanted to see how those students, they study English as a foreign language at Al-Aqsa University, how they perceive translanguaging during that course, which was delivered online, and also whether that practice or that pedagogy supports or constraints meaning making, especially in a semantics course that is really built on meaning, and how this use of translanguaging affects their engagement and learning outcomes. As I was talking about the context, I'm sure many of you are aware that all 12 universities in Gaza have been hit or destroyed, including those 60 university buildings were completely flattened, belonging to different universities in Gaza. More than 190 academics, many of them were with their family members, have been killed, and this interruption and interruption of that academic journey, of course, impacted more than 87%. The latest number I read was more than 90,000 students from the higher education sector in Gaza were impacted by that interruption. And in another piece for the Independent, I talked about how education was reduced to fragments instead of going back to school and starting a new academic year in universities and schools. We were talking about those buildings and those campuses that have been flattened. So instead of going back to school and universities, students are staying home and joining classes online whenever they could. So what is translanguaging? In the beginning of my research project, I made sure that I introduced the definition to my students before interviewing them to make sure that they are on the same page when it comes to the definition of translanguaging. And I wanted to make sure that they do not confuse translanguaging with code switching, because it is not really code switching. It goes beyond that, just merely using some L1 words or L1 expressions, but rather it uses that full repertoire and full linguistic and cultural resources students have in a bilingual or multilingual classroom. And it felt that using that approach in class in the Gaza context suited that war-torn or crisis-affected learning environment, honestly. Because from the findings I'll be sharing with you today, students talked about how they felt that it was really effective for their linguistic understanding and linguistic skills, and also in particular for that particular course, semantics, with those like abstract concepts that I'll be talking about. Excuse me. So why in Gaza's war-torn context, why I used translanguaging in my class? Because I felt that the war really decreased attention and memory for my students. I felt that I struggled with focusing. I struggled with so many things around me. And of course, my students had the same feeling of feeling less attentive. They were not focused. But the experience with that particular course and intentionally incorporating L1 in class using Arabic systematically in a planned way, felt that it provided my students with that emotional support and emotional anchor. Because semantics, and this can be applied to many other courses that have that element of abstract concepts or ideas that really need scaffolding and support for students to comprehend and understand. So in a summary, it felt that L1, in our case, Arabic plus English, really helped that comprehension and the feeling of my students that they were secure and calm. So the participants in this particular study were 12 fourth-year Palestinian EFL students from the English department at Al-Aqsa University. And as I said, it was an it was an online semantics course. It was delivered. The main platform was Moodle, but it was really supported, highly supported with a WhatsApp group because it was low bandwidth. We could access WhatsApp whenever we had connection, even if it was like unsteady connection, through text messages, through voice notes, and through taking photographs for any assignments or any writing students wanted to share and then send as photos in the group. But Moodle was tricky because it needed that steady connection to access the website of the university and then move to the platform, etc., etc. So it was multi-layered kind of accessing the content, and it wasn't possible for all students. And personally, I struggled with accessing Moodle, honestly, and I felt that WhatsApp was much easier. So I conducted the interviews in both Arabic and English because I wanted to kind of enhance that concept of what we aimed for, what we meant by incorporating translanguaging in the classroom. So I tried to apply this to the interview itself. So the interviews lasted between 45 to 60 minutes, and of course they were conducted virtually. during bombardment, during displacement, during that hunger I was talking about. So I always feel grateful for the students for giving me the time to ask them and to talk, regardless of the circumstances we were all experiencing. So I used semi-structured interviews, like that's common strategy in qualitative research, use thematic analysis for analyzing the data. And given the really unique circumstances we were all in, the context and the nature of the study, students' privacy were really protected in using pseudonyms and codes throughout. So if S number refers to female student, and then the number of the interview, male student, the number of the interview. Four main themes emerged from the interviews. The first one was that translanguaging was found to really enhance comprehension. And students were talking about that. I felt much better. I felt that, well, you were talking about really abstract terms. I'll be giving you examples of those abstract terms in this semantics course. But giving that Arabic equivalent helped us understand what we were talking about. So that linking with the equivalent in Arabic and that particular abstract term in English in semantics was seen useful. But I'm not here saying just translating the equivalent, but rather something wider, and I'll be giving you an example to elaborate on this. So that linkage between Arabic and English enhanced that understanding, and it felt that it supported those students with various proficiency levels, and this is common in our Palestinian context. So this particular student, she said, you introduce implicature in English. And this is a tricky one in semantics. When we were teaching before the war, and whenever I introduce implicature, and when I gave the examples in the book, in the textbook, it felt that it needed more effort to give examples in the second language and explain the concept. But incorporating it translanguage intentionally and systematically, it felt that with this abstract term, it felt that it helped. So this student, she said, I couldn't understand it. Arabic examples connected it to my experiences, and this is really interesting. This student said, excuse me, English terms can be unclear or abstract. So Arabic equivalents clarify meanings. Example, when I'm talking about abstract terms, when teaching polysemy, for example, words that have the same word has more than one meaning or different meanings, like the word bank can have more than one meaning. The word charge can have more than one meaning. You charge a phone, you charge somebody, etc. But the context helps, right? It's easy with the context. But when you're talking about EFL learners with various proficiency levels, this might be tricky. For example, in Arabic, and this is one of the examples unintentionally used in the course, the word ayn, ayn in Arabic, which could mean an eye, or it could mean a spring, water, or a source of something, or spine. So you see, the connotations of the same word vary, but giving that particular example in that course, in that context, with using that ayn as a polysemy in Arabic, it felt that this kind of facilitated students' comprehension of the term polysemy, and of course, implicature with in another context. So as you can see, it was felt that it made abstract ideas concrete, easier to understand. The second theme was translanguaging brings cultural relevance, and this was evident when students interpreted meaning through their own lived realities, particularly during the war. When we're talking about, during the course, we were talking about land, and the connotation that brings to mind this particular word was soil, property, etc. But the equivalent in Arabic is al-ard, which means land. But we had a really nice and interesting discussion about this in the group, talking about, well, what does the word ard, which means land, bring to your mind, and think about it that way. in terms of connotation and denotation. And students were talking about, well, whenever I hear this word, it's identity, it's belonging, it's my home, it's my homeland, etc. And the same applies to freedom. What does it, like, you lived reality, what does your lived reality bring to mind when you hear the word freedom? Students were talking about, well, it brings to my mind prison. My father is in prison. The other one said, it brings hope. It brings that idea of occupation and freedom from occupation. So that bringing of cultural relevance felt that it enhances their understanding of the connotative meaning. So translanguaging let them really analyze connotation through their own personal and collective histories. This particular student said, when we talked about al-ard, we don't just, when we talk about al-ard, land, we don't just mean soil. It means our home and what we lost. Freedom in English sounds simple, but for us, it means, look at that collective us. It means prison, walls, and hope. So this means that meaning is really inseparable from culture, and this gives that learning experience more sense, more meaning. It makes it more meaningful, I think, especially in wartime, that you encourage students and learners to link acquiring meaning and meaning making, especially in a semantics course, to their culture and their culture background. The third theme was the feeling that translanguaging and the use of systematic L1 in class reduced that cognitive burden, especially in a wartime, especially in that particular context. Students were traumatized. We were traumatized. Educators were traumatized. Students had lost, many of them had lost parents, siblings, homes. I was teaching them. I was traumatized. I lost 43 members of my extended family. I was traumatized. So we felt that we needed to support each other. So that mental relief that, and I'll be talking about that L1 and how we were checking and asking each other about how we felt, how we were doing. It reduced that cognitive burden and load. Psychologically, when it comes to the environment we were navigating and also the material where we were studying, so it felt that translanguaging was used honestly as a coping resource under duress or stress. And this is interesting because this particular student, she said, using Arabic in class makes me feel I am not isolated. And this possibly this refers to that proficiency levels, the various proficiency levels of the students in the same class, and the feeling that I am in within my own community. We are together. We are one family. And again, I'm just trying to highlight that unique environment in Gaza during that particular course, and perhaps this was an area that I wanted to contribute to through this particular study, that how translanguaging contributes to areas where like war-torn or crisis-afflicted areas. So again, it felt that translanguaging provided emotional safety for learners and for educators, and that cognitive clarity and reduction of cognitive load. The last and fourth theme was that social interaction and peer support. That particular student, when she said, I felt I wasn't isolated, this also continues here, the feeling that why I felt that I was more willing to participate, to ask questions, either in Arabic or in English, but I felt that I wasn't empowered, I was scaffolded, I was given the space during that tricky time to ask questions. So this reduced, of course, that feeling of anxiety over that perfect English of grammar or accent or etc. So it highlighted because students were given the space either to think in Arabic, to participate in Arabic, to discuss, or like draft things in their first language, and then provide the final output in L2 in a way that made it easier for them and more welcoming and more accommodating. So in a word, this seemed to enhance that feeling of community solidarity. We were like I still have that particular semantics group, and whenever I go back to see the messages we were exchanging in Arabic and English, with I asked them to vote in a poll using the poll feature in WhatsApp. I recall those moments of that solidarity when a student said, "Hi everyone," and a nearby house was just bombarded, and I wanted to share this with you. She felt that escaping to that particular WhatsApp group was kind of heaven for her, a family. She was telling us what happened with her family. She said, "My father was injured," and this was in Arabic and sometimes in English. So it was a sense of community. This particular student said, "If only English is allowed, I wouldn't ask. But with Arabic, I want to ask questions," kind of giving space, a secure space. Using Arabic makes our relationship stronger. We belong, that sense of belonging and solidarity to the same community. So to summarize, as you can see, those 4 themes were about how translanguaging practices, following a systematic approach of incorporating Arabic in this particular course, provided that cognitive benefit, the cultural relevance of the terms and their language, providing that emotional support, and also the social and peer support and the sense of community. So pedagogical strategy and survival mechanism. So we used it to, as I said, to explain concepts in semantics, which was our course, but more importantly, it felt that it provided that survival mechanism that we all wanted during that tricky and really difficult time. So what implications does this have for teaching in conflict zones? And well, I think conflict is an understatement. Well, like wartime zones, and the other day we were talking about Ukraine and Sudan and other wartime zones. So it feels that, and these are the kind of recommendations from my research, that using L1, L2 only or monolingual teaching might be inadequate in times of trauma and collective trauma, really collective trauma and loss. So translanguaging here comes to bridge comprehension and emotional needs and supports that students' feeling of agency and resilience, that we are together, we can do it, we can help each other, we can do it. So it encourages the feeling of stability amid chaos and destruction, which is everywhere. So practical strategies that I used in this particular course, I always made sure that any emotional check-ins, asking about students, asking about their families, asking about their neighborhoods, whether they are displaced, whether they are safe, whether they need support, that was always in L1. It was intentional to be in L1 in Arabic to make sure that students had access to an opportunity to express how they felt. And as I said, introducing abstract concepts, I made sure that these were always introduced bilingually to overcome that challenge of abstractness and in the concepts like implicature, presupposition, polysemy, connotation, etc. And as I said, in terms of al-ard, using culturally relevant L1 examples enhances that understanding a lot. Any expressions, any explanations that were sent in the group on WhatsApp, I did my best to include bilingual explanations, not translating every single word by word, but rather kind of scaffolding and supporting the content. And this is linked to that that abstract concept thing. And also, whenever students had the chance to ask questions, mixed language questions and using L1 and L2 were encouraged and allowed, and reflection was always encouraged to use L1 and L2, Arabic and English at the same time. But this is important. We understand, we appreciate that these are EFL learners, and they are here to learn English and to improve English proficiency. So that's why I said it was systematic and planned. It wasn't random. It wasn't code switching just because of losing that particular term using L1. No, but it was support, it was scaffolding for students, but it wasn't meant to replace L2 goals of exposure and improving proficiency and access to L2 resources and proficiency levels. So it was kind of a cautious use of L1 in class. And that's why one of the recommendations of this particular research was teachers, including myself, I think we needed that training on how to use L1 effectively in class to make sure that it does not replace L2 goals, it does not decrease students to L2 and exposure to L2. So that balance of L1 scaffolding and support, but at the same time, L2 exposure, because they need it, especially in EFL levels, where students have exposure to L2 only in classrooms. Yeah, mostly that's the only context where they get exposure to L2. This is unlike ESL or context where English is used on a daily basis in supermarkets or on train or in the bus stop. But in EFL context like Palestine and Gaza in particular, students have access to English and exposure to English only in the classroom. So in conclusion, as you can see, that use of translanguaging in this particular course was found to increase comprehension of semantics and abstract concepts in particular, because they were connected with whatever culturally meaningful references and concepts the students could understand. And it reduced that cognitive and emotional burden, the feeling of connection and solidarity, and that community really increased among students and myself as well. We still feel that we are a family, and translanguaging was seen as a strategy that contributed to that pedagogical resilience of the students, this particular cohort of students, and myself as their teacher. Thank you so much. And if you have any questions, I'm happy.
Hello, Ahmed.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
yeah.
Sure.
It is not a question. Thank you. In fact, not just thank you, but many thanks, because I can feel you. Having been a victim of civil war myself nearly 60 years ago in Nigeria, but mine was not as bad as yours. First, I want to commend your resilience in the face of what happened, not knowing whether you wake up alive the next morning, and still being able to not only teach, but to even think of a research. It's very commendable.
Thank you.
And there are two key things I've taken from this presentation. One is the emotional check-ins, just to keep your students, on the same page, to make them feel loved, to make them feel welcome, regardless of what was going on around them outside the virtual classroom. And then this strategy you adopted, the translanguaging, also contributed to reducing the cognitive load, which is great. Because when people talk about translanguaging, I don't get to hear about the reduction in cognitive load. But considering the circumstances, this was very, very important, And technical challenge, yeah, using WhatsApp. I can relate to that as well because I'm an African. In Africa, many teachers can't even afford Zoom bandwidth, so it's WhatsApp.
Yeah, right.
I recall a symposium in Africa at Alta Heart. We had a room with 18 people on Zoom, and there was a parallel session with 350 people on WhatsApp. So, I mean, this was very creative of the learners to be able to source where they could get signals and everything else. So, thank you very much. That's all I can say. I just appreciate what you've done and everything that has gone on there. It's so unfortunate, but thank you for just being able to put this together.
Thank you, Ken. Really appreciate your work.
And I just have to piggyback on that because I often think about during times of trauma and war like you were speaking of, I'm like, really, these people have so many more important things to do than go to English class. And so I just love how you created this open space, to let people know you can still learn, lowering those affective filters. I mean, I can't agree more with what Okan is saying here. And I truly appreciate how, you're focusing on the research and being able to just take this awful situation and give it to the field to say, these are our lessons learned and this is how we can do better. And so I don't know if it's similar to Okan, but I'm just grateful for the session. It was very well put together, very clear. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I really appreciate it.
And I think Mirna is typing something up maybe, and I'm hoping that I'll be able to read it out loud when it gets to me.
It's not showing.
She's still typing.
Oh, she's still typing. Okay, it's not showing in the chat box. Yeah, don't worry, Mirna. We'll read it out. Just keep typing. Brian is here. Hello, Brian.
Hello, Brian.
Okay.
Here we go. Ready? Oh, I'm excited. Okay, let's see. These are the words of the wonderful, who I've seen in many other sessions, the wonderful Mirna Miranda. It says, translanguaging plays an important role in bilingual learning environments. I connected to Spanish-English contexts. Although the languages are different, the process is the same. Students use all their linguistic resources to make meaning, understand academic concepts, and express themselves more fully. In Arabic English learning, translanguaging allows students to move naturally between their home language and English, especially during challenging situations such as wartime online learning. This flexibility helps them process information, reduce stress, and build deeper comprehension. Bravo, Ms. Mira.
Awesome. I think this is a perfect summary of the whole study, Mirna. So thank you so much.
Yeah, you guys need to connect later and maybe work on it.
It's a perfect abstract of the study, yeah.
Yeah.
Hi, Brian.
Hi, assalamu alaikum. Good morning.
Alaikum salam. Good morning.
Yes, I'm in Maryland in the United States, and forgive me for joining so late, but I just wanted to thank you so much for your presentation. And what I'm taking away from it is the importance of creating a community where people feel safe and empowered to take intellectual risks. And I feel where I currently teach, there's a real, I don't know, we've heard that it's important to limit L1, and it's something that I push back against, is that people need, like especially as newcomers, to feel safe, to recognize that multilingualism is a gift, and it's something that I absolutely encourage. It's part of students' voices. So I appreciate you for putting that importance of building community and making people feel safe and secure to take intellectual risks.
Thank you, Brian. I agree with you, and I think that aspect of providing students with that sense of security and empowerment, those are two important principles of trauma-informed education, where students are given that sense of, well, we share the same story, we share the same struggle, so let's feel that, yeah, you are not alone, you are secure in terms of we're creating a WhatsApp group because I have the same issues with internet connection. Don't feel stigmatized. Don't feel kind of marginalized. Don't feel that there is that digital divide that prevents you from joining your class. I do a lot of adaptation, and I was telling my students this because this is one of the principles of trauma-informed education, telling learners about any personal adaptation that you do as their educator during crisis. So this would encourage them that they are not alone and feel isolated. So from the beginning of the class, from the beginning of the course, I told my students that you are not alone. We are a community. We are using this particular approach because we will go low bandwidth, not because one student is able to pay money or etc., or another student cannot access internet. No. It's the same problem that we are all facing. Access to internet and electricity was tricky and still. And when I started the particular course, so I've been asked that particular question so many times, like how could you manage accessing internet and charging devices? This was one way of doing it. I'm not sure if you can see that vehicle battery.
Yeah, we see it slightly. It's blurry, but we see it.
Blurry, yeah. So plugging an internet, like the modem, plugging it into a vehicle battery, so you run the modem. Because that's the only way you do it. And then you charge that battery using solar panels, wherever you have access to solar panels, and some of these are damaged, you charge your battery. So I told that whole story to my students. Don't feel stigmatized. Don't feel alone. Don't feel that you are alone. We are on the same boat. We have the same story. So that personal adaptation. Oh, thank you so much, Brian. I can see the Palestinian flag in the background. This is really lovely. Thank you so much for that solidarity. So that story played a really important role in avoiding re-traumatizing students, and this is important in trauma-informed education, to avoid re-traumatizing students and encourage them to take part in that community and the feeling of solidarity. So it's an important point. Thank you so much for raising it, Brian.
I think we're at the point where if you wanted to say, oh, sorry, Brian. I was just going to say it's we're at the end of our session. So if you wanted to make some closing comments, but I also don't want to cut Brian off at all whatsoever. So if you want to share something, please do.
No, I'm just going to say you're very welcome. And thank you so much for your comments today. I'm taking it with me. I'm taking it to heart. And just know that there's international solidarity, and we're here with you in Maryland and the United States as well. Thank you for everything.
Thank you so much, Brian, and everyone for tuning in and for your kind words. So I really appreciate it. And thank you.
Okay. Excellent. Hopefully, so now we've got about 15-minute break between each session. So look at the schedule, see what else we have available, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next session. I'm going to turn off the recording.
Sure. Thank you, sir. Bye, everyone. Thank you.